Thank you, Reva. Over to you for your sermon.
Thank you, Marion. I'm very distressed to hear about Rabbi Margolis's husband. Is it he who is ill?
Yes.
I must find out afterwards. And as you said, please God hear our prayers for everyone. This Shabbat is a very special Shabbat for many reasons, but mainly because it's the Shabbat before Pesach. And the Shabbat before Pesach is known as the Shabbat Hagadol. Can people hear me and see me?
Yes, Lawrence.
Oh, good. So I am Shabbat Hagadol. Last week was Shabbat HaKadosh, which is 2 weeks before Pesach, but it was Rosh HaKadosh because it was the beginning of a new month, which is so important in our Jewish calendar. Every month we have a chance to have a new beginning, to rethink things, to redo things. But especially this Shabbat HaGadol is very unique for us. Next Shabbat, Baruch Hashem, we are actually going to be together, many of us, in Temple Israel Hillbrow. I can't see many of you, and I'll just try. Oh, that's better. We'll be together, many of us, actually in the hallowed walls of Temple Israel Hillbrow. Melvin and Uta, I know you can't be with us, but Baruch Hashem, as Jacob said, provided I get the digital aspect right, you will join us as well. But when did this first Gadol HaShabbat, Shabbat HaGadol happen? It actually happened in Egypt. It happened on the 10th of Nisan, 5 days before the Israelites actually did our exodus from Egypt. And it was on that day, 5 days before we left, that they were given the first commandment, or the first mitzvah, let me say. And that was to set aside a lamb, a sacrificial lamb, to set it aside. There are many different reasons why a lamb was chosen. As you know, it was the blood of a lamb on the doorposts of the Jewish home that the angel of death flew over. But there are other reasons given by different rabbis. And one of the reasons I've read about is that the lamb was considered to the Egyptians as a god. So it was a great affront to the Egyptians. It was like saying, we will not accept slavery. We will not accept your gods. But anyway, so the first, can you believe it? You and I sitting here together thousands of years later, the first Hagadol Shabbat was in Egypt 5 days before they actually left. And I thought that was a beautiful thing to share with you. As we mentioned last week, the spiritual disease called tsaras shows itself as a physical blemish on the body. And actually last week's parasha and this week's parasha actually go together because they're still discussing this disease. There's a lot of controversy, of course. None of the rabbis agree. It's good that the rabbis don't agree. It's good that there's so many different opinions, because how else can we learn tolerance of another opinion? And so many people think it was some other type of disease which actually infected not only the person and their clothing, but reading the Torah this week describes how it even affected the walls of a house. And there's a whole process, if you want to read it, it's unbelievable. It goes into unbelievably great detail for removing this disease from the house and what the homeowners were required to do and take everything out, etc., which I won't go into. However, I think I have mentioned it before, or perhaps in my message, there's no doubt in my mind at all that when you and I pray, when we think, when we argue, there's an energy that comes out of us that in ancient days people referred to as an aura. Years ago in the 80s, I was fortunate enough to do a 2-week course in America. I was chosen one of 12 people worldwide as a transformational motivational trainer, and we had to pay our own ways. And my parents helped me with the cash. And we got there, and I'll never forget the UCLA University, which was connected to this court, brought what they called a Kirlian machine, a Kirlian photographic machine. Has anyone ever heard of that name, a Kirlian? Do you know what it did, Uta? It showed us that when you put your hand on it, and it showed you, it could do with a sort of an X-ray, it showed you the rays, the energy coming from your hand. And when someone shouted and screamed, the energies changed color. And it showed you there was energy even coming off a flower that was still connected to the stem, and even for a little while afterwards. Now, of course, all of those experiments in those days have gone full-blown today to know that when we talk, when we think, when we act, as long as we're alive, there is an energy that emanates from our very thinking. And today they have proved this. And so I do believe, and I've said before, that the energy that is within the very bricks and stones and windows of Temple Israel Hillbrow already has an energy that we have collectively created together with the people from Cape Town and all over, in your room, in my room, that we will take with us when we go back to Temple Israel Hillbrow. I think I did share with you that in the original shul, when I joined it, just several months before they proposed to sell it, and that's why I joined, the British rabbi, and I really can never blame him for this, because if I came from Britain, I'd say the same thing, looked at from the bimmer and said to everyone, what future can this synagogue have? Judaism is not mixed up in bricks and mortar. It's not in stones and windows. It's in children. It's in the future. There's no children here, no future. So we'll take our Judaism and go with it to another progressive shul, Beit David or Beit Emmanuel at the time. I wasn't a renowned member of the movement at the time, and Sarona will remember every word I'm saying, and maybe someone else is with us. But Baruch Hashem, we took them on, and because of just one person, really, you and I are here today in these hallowed walls during the disruption of COVID-19. We're together, and we're here today because of one vote, and we saved our shul from being sold. And it wasn't Reba Foreman, it was Sarona, it was Marion, it was all the people who were with us at those days, and some of them who are no longer with us, like the wonderful people who were the original founders, even when they were very young, of Temple Israel Hillbrow. So the energy is very important. And the sages have warned us that a negative energy equally can go into your room or your home. When you're negative and complaining and moaning and nothing's ever going to come right, and I hate that person next door. I've spoken like that. We've all been conditioned, particularly when we're scared and frightened that things aren't going to come right, to speak negatively. Those thoughts are energy. We've proved it with that machine. You can feel it. It's the wrong energy. And we've got to be very careful that that negative energy doesn't stay around us. And the way we can expel it is exactly as we're doing tonight, with beautiful thoughts, with wonderful thoughts. Never doubt yourself. All of us have strayed from the path of being a mensch or doing the right thing. But the minute you decide, you're still you inside, you can get that back. And it's the unique people in Temple Israel during this past 2 years, I believe, that has given me, I know, and I'm sure Marion, Jacob, Sarona, Barbara, all of us, to go back there, Lawrence, with a new energy, with a new closeness to Hashem. Because over the last 2 years, we found a total new way of being together. And because our motives were good, and because God prepared us for this in the digital era, that when this plague came, we could still be together, we could still reach each other. And Graham, you might have walked back into my life just a couple of months ago, but I've got such a clear photograph of you years ago, coming with your grandmother and sitting in Temple Israel. And somehow I always had a connection to you. And I knew somehow that you would come back. And Uta, it is thanks to you that in this book, The Mensch, that's being launched by the South African Jewish Board of Deputies, that Jews who made a great difference in apartheid, that Rabbi David Benjamin's father is in it. You didn't even tell me you were writing an article. I didn't even know we were in it, and I was so upset that Rabbi Weil wasn't. And there was Uta. That's helped Temple Israel Hillbrow. You've made us all so proud. So it's really quite amazing. And I'd like to just share the thoughts of Rabbi Rick Jacobs, who is the head of our entire movement worldwide. Our movement, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem, is the biggest religious affiliation of any Jewish stream anywhere in the world. It is, of course, combined with conservative and liberal, even bigger. And I was very surprised to learn that the Chabad and progressive Judaism, or ultra-Orthodox and progressive Judaism, started virtually at the same time, just over 200 years ago. And I believe it is crucial that we have these different streams of Judaism. I believe it's crucial that we learn to respect the ultra-Orthodox and they learn to respect us. And we learn to respect modern Orthodox and they learn. This is why we have all the streams. They've existed since the beginning. With the 12 tribes, there were many different streams of Judaic power and claiming. And to claim one way as the only way is heretic. It's against our religion. But let me just share some of the words of Rabbi Rick Jacobs with you. So, Passover is about liberation, not only from Egyptian bondage, but from all our own fixed ways of doing things in the past. Some were bad, some were good. But even so, we've been forced to move on. I have never, ever been this close to Torah or to Hashem or to the people with me at Temple Israel as I am today with all of you. And Rabbi Rick Jacobs, the most wonderful chap, really says, we must also look at ourselves. Are we hanging on to old ideas? Are we resisting another one's ideas? Let us find a way of being together, sharing those ideas, and perhaps with your idea, my idea, and someone else's, we can come up with something unique. Almost 2,000 years ago, The rough structure of our current Seder didn't exist. The way we celebrate Passover, the liberation from Egypt, grew out of the painful disruption of the destruction of the Second Temple. We wouldn't be together like this. The structures of Judaism, Rabbi Rick Jacob says, were shattered. No more temple, no more sacrifices. Chanda. The priests were no longer in charge. The big boys were no longer in charge. And this is the only reason that Passover became primarily a home-centered, in our case, a shul-centered, a home, for those who are not doing their own Passover, and particularly for each and everyone walking the path of Judaism with us, you have to be there with us next Friday night. So it became a home-centered ritual event, with each family adding something unique to it, or each shul seder adding something unique to it. Jewish life was radically transformed when both our first and second temples were destroyed. And it's been transforming all the way till today. And Baruch Hashem, each stream still exists. It would be nice, though, as Rabbi Rick would say, that when the streams would realize that we must all sit together one day and agree to disagree, but agree to be Jews, to love each other, and to be absolutely loyal and faithful to the laws of Torah, the laws of being a mensch, the laws of respecting each other. So Rabbi Rick says, when will our gatherings include individuals who resemble the Haggadah's 4 children, the wise, the wicked, the simple, and the one who isn't even able to ask a question? And then he goes on to say, isn't it true that all those 4 people are inside each of us? There are times when I've kept stum and I didn't want to ask a question because I was scared what perhaps other people would think. Maybe I was with other faiths or other people. Isn't there something of all those children within each of us? But most importantly, do we simply ask the 4 questions because we do it every year? But why don't we ask the really challenging questions about our own lives, how we can make ourselves better, how we can learn to listen instead of talk too much? I know that's one of my big lessons to learn, but how particularly we can learn to listen to each other, to other ideas, other religions, not change, but find out what we have in common. So Rabbi Rick goes on to say, who's going to be at your Seder this year? Let all who are hungry come and eat. And Baruch Hashem, you will see that's exactly what Temple Israel Hillbrow does. We invite all the Jews who are with the Chevri Kadisha, and sometimes even a non-Jew may join us. And that's our biggest blessing of all, because our family is first each other, and our other family is the whole of humanity and all the different religions. And it says, we actually say in the Seder, in the beginning, let all who are hungry come and eat. This includes not just hunger of our tummies, but of the mind and the soul as well. All of us want to have a purpose. All of us want to make a small difference to each other and to humanity while we are on this earth. And so Rabbi Rick goes on to say, let's just ask the words, but also let's show it after Pesach in our actions, especially against intolerance, bigotry, and hatred, which is something Temple Israel stands for. Jacob Hurwitz, on our newsletter this week, wrote the words of Rabbi Moses Cyrus Weiler that's in our exhibition, which he brought to Temple Israel, not today, but in 1936. Look at the newsletter, you will see them. And his prayer for us in those beautiful words that Jacob has put under Temple Israel Hillbrow in today's newsletter will show you that we are still on that path with Rabbi Rick Jacobs, where we can all sit down together, irrespective of our differences, and especially sit down and then act towards those and help those who are hungry, but not only hungry in physically, but are hungry for the respect, the love of others, as so many refugees and African nationals in our country, and just the despised and the marginalized on. So he says, our Seder ritual should continue to be an act of disruption. Remember, we've just come from one of the biggest disruptions since 100 years ago, and then the last World War, the coronavirus, and now this Ukraine war. May this disruption lead us to transform our minds and our thoughts so that they will not happen again. And as we leave our tables renewed and ready to lead more engaged, more creative Jewish lives, and in memory of another great rabbi who was at our shul for more than 12 years, the late Chief Rabbi Cyril Harris, who wrote, "We have a duty to our own Jewish nations," and equally, he wrote a beautiful book, which I'll be sharing with you. It's The Duty of the Jew to All Humanity and to the non-Jew. So, may all those who are hungry for a Judaism of justice and hope, hungry for a Judaism who gives hope to the world and fights for justice, find their way to a beautiful home in our shul, in their shul, or in any religious and in their own homes. Shabbat Shalom.